close. And Brother Snell, would you give the invocation for us, please?
Rise, please. Gracious Heavenly Father, we ask you, Lord, to be with us as we go through this meeting today, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for all the people that showed up for the meetings, the council members and our members, guest members. And Lord, help us to make good decisions today. And help us, Lord, to just walk as brothers and sisters through the day and through the afternoon meetings. And be with us, Lord. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Roll call.
Meredith Rayleigh.
Here.
Bill Anglin.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker. Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden. Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Don Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr. Tyler Gloria Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
Chris Soap. David Thornton. Kara Cowan Watts.
Honey, we do have a quorum. We have a quorum. The purpose of this special rules meeting is to discuss the progress made to date in implementing the TARO, giving perspective over the last several years, not only from the business sector but also from the governmental sector. And Diane will be presenting it, as well as David Stewart. And I'm assuming that we'll be talking about contracting, subcontracting, regulations, etc., provisions. Okay, great. Is there one of you that prefers to go first, Diane or David? I said Diane or David. You have the
Miss
floor,
Chair.
Mr.
May I be recognized? All right.
We recognize you.
Okay.
Do I have to stand?
If you can. No. Right you there. Well, thank you for the opportunity. What we anticipate is about a 40-minute presentation. I'd like to say a few words, and then we'll have the history of progress in TARO. Be about 15 minutes. The current policies and process, about the history of Diane Kelly, current policies and processes, David Stewart, future concepts and changes under development, David, Diane Kelly, and then we'd hope to entertain questions and answers. I've been circulating a letter among our staff that's addressed to the council as to the status, the overall roll-up of the status of where we're at. And basically, some of the things that I've shared, I've understood from the council, and I've talked to a number of TARO vendors about their difficulties in the past. There's several things that you will get in a letter from me. I've asked C&E to refine those and make sure that they're in functional and operational form. But one of those is to create something like an ombudsman or a small business advocate at the C&D level that could look over small business contracting for each of our entities, C&I, C&E, the environmental group, and C&B. To be, and I've kidded often, but I'm very serious, is somebody serving this function as Brett Thompson has done on constituent issues with employment. So basically somebody designated at C&B level that would be responsive and as an advocacy point for constituent requests about subcontracting. Generally, all the research we've done, the biggest issue has been subcontracting and construction. The second thing that the speaker suggested, I think is a good idea, is to have some standard language for each of our contractors and subcontractors, which would acknowledge they would have a right, a cause of action to go to tribal court for prompt payment and dispute resolution. rather than create a bureaucracy that would entertain that, I would anticipate it would be something like a small claims process where you could expedite disputes of payment, non-payment, or dispute of underlying non-payment. See, there's a couple other issues. We will be designating somebody in our own accounts payable group to whether there's issues of prompt payment that they could expedite that. So far, we've really found a rare exception that people are not getting paid by the tribe timely. It seemed like there was another substantive provision I wanted to share with you. Apologize, it skips my mind at this time, but we believe that many of these issues can be resolved at staff alignment. I know the other one that was a big one. Harley and Curtis and I discussed it with C&I, is that we come up with a standard bidding process. Right now, the bidding process for contractors is actually custom and practiced by the general contractor. So there'll be different processes, how you open the bids, when you open the bids, what's expected, what information shared. And so we can standardize that process. Everybody's expectations are the same, whether the bid is being opened at C&I or an environmental company or C&B or C&E. So we'd have a standard bidding process that Terrell would be familiar with, and each of our bidders would understand and be consistent. So let me, if there's no questions about it, let me ask Diane Kelly to come up and visit with you. If that agenda is proper.
Do you want to be open for questions?
Absolutely.
Anybody have any questions of Chief Smith? Harley, and then Mr.
I don't have a question right now, but I want to make a comment of what the Chief just said. And what we had talked about is I had got some calls from some Terrell bidders that we weren't opening the bids, we weren't reading the bids out loud when the bidding process was taking place. I understand why we don't do that. But the other thing, the flip side of that is the Terrell bidder would like to know what the bids were that was bid on a particular job. And simply the fact was that they want to know where they stand on why they didn't get the job. It's like maybe their vendor is pricing lumber too high. Maybe they need to talk to their vendor. So, and I realize, we have a 24-hour period now where they can come in and take a look at those bids. And we still do that after that 24-hour period. That is read the bids out loud. And that's one of the things that they're concerned about. They just don't know where they are in the bidding process. So we've talked about that, and just to understand a little bit more about what we talked about, that's all we had discussed. When the bids are read out loud after it's all said and done, all the contractors' bids are read out loud. So that's what we talked about.
Tina?
And maybe consideration could be given to carrying that a step further along the state. By the next day, well, let's see, the next day they've got the successful bidder up on internet. And after they approve the contract, they put the line item, how they bid, the line item amounts are put up on internet. It's sort of a tool for all others to use, that this is the successful bidder and here's what they bid for each line item. So you know where you were being outbid at. And I wondered if maybe we could get a process like that eventually, where everybody's on the same playing ground. They all know if they bid $700 to put in cement and the winning guy had $400, they're going to have to get more competitive. Mm-hmm. I would hope that maybe at some point we could get like that and everything be open, and within 21 days everybody knows what those line items were and where they got bid at, or where they were outbid at. The other thing is, I didn't get the letter you're talking about.
I haven't issued it yet.
Okay.
I've circulated with C&E to make sure that things we've discussed are in the form that they can actually deliver them. So I would anticipate in the next few days you'll get a letter from them.
Are we still looking, Chief, at some of the state, the way that things are done on the state level is maybe incorporating some of their better ideas into some of the things that we do?
I've mentioned that to David, and I think David has accepted the challenge to come up with this standardized bidding process. I'm sure he'll delegate it. I mentioned it, I've talked to him about that. My only reservation is that that may work for a single kind of project, but in a multiple trade project, it may be a little bit more difficult, but it's something that I've asked him to visit on the state system because it seems, for bridges, it works very well. I don't know if in multiple building kind of construction if it works as well, but it's a good concept.
Anyone else? Mr. Snell?
I don't know whether this question be for you or not, Chad, but I got a question here. The subcontractor bids for the general contractor. And the general goes in with this sub's bid, and the subcontractor has made his bid with the general. And the general gets the job. Immediately goes out and tries to get other bids for, say for instance, I got the steel building, and I got it for $30,000. Immediately he goes out and tries to get a bid for $25,000. Now is that, how are we protecting our people from them doing that? Will a bid bond protect that?
I'm going to have to defer to David. You know, our contract is with the general. I don't know how far we reach in to manage his subcontractors. So I'm going to defer to David on that.
Anyone else? Gordon?
Not to go back to the state again, but there is a provision in state contracts when you bid, you disclose your subs, and then if you try to change them, it has to be done with the permission of the person that made the contract with you, which in this instance would be Cherokee Nation. They keep them from getting rid of them after they've used their bid.
If they went in with that bid.
I'm going to have to defer to David. I don't know what our current practice is. I would imagine that part of evaluating a bid is whether the subcontractors are in and get points and such. So let me defer to David on that.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much.
Dave, are you next, or you?
I think Diane.
Diane, okay. Good afternoon, Diane.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to tag along with David in his presentation. He's the one who kind of opened the door for us to do this. And Ann and I kind of got together with the chief, and the chief thought that maybe we needed to do a better job of presenting what we've done and what we've accomplished, and we agreed. Sometimes charts are better if you can look at charts and see and do some comparison from year to year, and the information and the slides that we have kind of really give you a little history. If you'll notice in your packet, the red packets, that's the information that Commerce and Career Services put together. If you'll notice the topic says Certified Indian Economic Enterprise. That's basically what we're calling this, although some of you may not recognize that's the Tarot certification. And it's basically a certification from an economic standpoint for all of these businesses who come through to get certified. And this is a second quarter procurement report. If you'll go to the Act itself, there's a segment in the Act that says that we would provide a quarterly report. And what we've been doing is we've been providing you with the certification process and been bringing that forward. And then we've also been coming back and updating. But what we're going to do in the future is that Commerce, who operates the bid center, and then we have the responsibility of doing the monitoring and the wage and hour and making sure that the businesses are hiring our Indian people. We will be partnering with Commerce so that in future, when you get your monthly report, it will be a certified Indian Economic Enterprise report, which will reflect all those things. And on a quarterly basis, we will be able to provide you with some graphs and some pie charts, bar graphs, to show you the progress that's been made. A certified Indian Economic Enterprise is all Indian-owned certified businesses that are certified through our process with our certification committee. Right now, the certification committee can be pulled together. It can be pulled together once a month or twice a month. If the need arises where there's going to be a major bid that's going to go out, we can pull that certification group together. All of those people work here within the Cherokee Nation. They work in different departments. Some are in finance. They can read spreadsheets. They can read financial reports. They also have the capability and knowledge of looking at the construction or the bid, the RFP, and they can determine whether or not that work can be done for the amount of cost, because we've got people that are in construction that sit on the certification committee. This past month, we went in to look at the number of people that were on the certification committee, and we went back to the supervisors who supervise them and asked to have another person who has the same credentials to set in as a backup, so that in the event that we had to do this twice a month and that person may not be available and we wouldn't have a quorum, then we would have the necessary backup people to do the certifications on a monthly basis.
And I'm going to interrupt. Do you prefer that we save our questions until you're finished, or can we ask you questions during your discussion?
That's your call, Madam Chairman.
We might forget if we don't ask.
Okay, that's up to you.
Harley, you
Diane, how many people are on your certification committee, and do you know the names of those people?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Louise King, who is a financial person. She's also served in the finance office as the controller at one time. She has been in finance. She's been here for over 20 years. We have Deborah Lack, who is her backup. Deborah has a master's in business administration, and she also does finance, and she can read financial reports, and she's had extensive training. Bub Pruitt, who works in the construction area, who's worked for the Housing Authority for a number of years. He's also worked in a supervisory role. And then his backup would be Danny Dotson, who does the estimations on all of their rehab construction sites. Dave Roberts, who works in the Jack Farmer's area. He does the internal construction, similar to what Buell used to do here at the Nation. And his backup is Taylor Alzanay, who is the supervisor over construction and facilities maintenance. And both of those two young men have had extensive experience working in the construction area. Larry Ketcher, who has worked in employment and training with job-related services, has also been in the Taro area as well as employment and training. He serves as the chairman of that committee, and he's very familiar with the Taro laws and act. The other person is, I was afraid he was going to ask me harder. There's another person. Wayne Isaacs. Wayne Isaacs works in the environmental services program because we do a lot of work with environmental services, and his backup is Tom Elkins. Are there any other questions related to the certification committee?
Any other questions? Carry on.
Okay. As I said, since C&E was reporting today, Career Services and Commerce wanted to better illustrate the progress that we made to increase certified Indian economic enterprise in procurement and opportunities since the late 2005. If you'll look at your charts, most of those will reflect from 2005 up to 2009. The bid center was opened in 2005. This was one of Chief Smith's initiatives to better capture where all the bids were going. And believe you me, it's been a learning curve because some of the players have changed, and Anna and I have done our due diligence in trying to bring those groups together periodically to make sure that they were fully aware of, what needed to happen and making sure that the bid center was apprised of all the bids. Occasionally, things will slip through the crack when you're dealing with an enterprise in a government as big as the Cherokee Nation. But in fairness to everybody, I think everybody has done a really good job of trying to keep everybody informed. And when we fail, we all fail. If one fails, we all fail. And we've been able to expand the One-Stop Business Center, and we've opened one in Claremore. And in 2005, when the One-Stop Business Initiative Center opened, we were able to start tracking where these businesses were, and we've been able to come up with some data. Prior to that, we were hard-pressed in obtaining all of this data, so the reports will reflect from 2005 forward. In the future, we will begin reporting similar information as today's report on a quarterly basis, as I said, and these reports will combine all Terrell information, which will be career services and commerce, in one report. And we'll still report on commerce and the functions that go on in commerce, and I'll still be giving you reports on employment training, which will be separate, but our Terrell report will be combined. So that way it'll be easier to read, and we'll try to give you as much data, statistical information as possible. And we've put all this information on a spreadsheet, so it'll be easy to track hereafter. You'll also still receive individual reports, and we'll make sure that we try to get all that in early.
I take it, if I'm I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. So it says inclusion of procurement opportunities under 5,000 or reporting is a future effort, which was one of my questions when I got here. Is, if I'm reading this correctly, just the under $5,000 bids is a total of $5.7 million year to date just in the Cherokee Nation.
Are you looking on a page that I haven't got to? I'm still
Yeah,
on
I
page 1.
thought you were wrapping it up.
Oh, no.
So,
I'm still on page 1. Just giving you the introduction. I'm sorry. I haven't got over to the graphs yet. But I will when I get there. I'm not sure which page it's on. If you go to page 2, the graph depicts the 5-year span from the opening of the bid center in Tahlequah. We want to show you the progress that's been made. And if you look from 2005 to 2009, and I apologize, Kara. You thought I was going to give it real brief. I'm not sorry. But this will show you the blue in the 2009. And if you'll notice that the blue depicts the number of certified businesses, and the maroon also shows that. And you can see how that's grown considerably. Page 3, the slide illustrates the type of Indian-owned businesses that are certified through the Terrell process. You'll note construction is in green. And the reason that I point that out is because a lot of the questions that you as council members have centers around the construction. And I think a lot of it has to do with maybe the backgrounds. I know Bill's been in construction, Curtis has been in construction, Harley's been in construction, Kara. And I think that a lot of the questions that you all ask us about the Terrell process or the certified Indian businesses center around that. But when you look at this pie chart, you'll know that makes up probably about maybe 1/3 of the overall certifications. The red being engineers, Kara, I know that you're interested in that. Plumbers and architects, they constitute the bulk of the certified businesses. And construction contractors seem to get the most attention, which we know, and that may be because of where a lot of the money is going. In the future, we hope to overlay Cherokee Nation purchases by industry and show what percentage of industry purchases are awarded to certified businesses. Page 4. This is a good chart. The chart breaks down the certified business procurement awards before the One-Stop Business Center opened in Tahlequah. The procurement percentage was 6.35 in 2005. That was with the former council. 2006 was with the former council. 2007. If you'll note, 2008, 2009 has been during your administration. So you can see how this council has really taken a vested interest in the Indian-owned businesses and the certification process, and we appreciate that. Note that the purple and the light blue are the figures for the last 2 years. This is significant progress, which is due to the council spreading the word, I'm sure. The bid centers in Tahlequah and Claremore have increased business training, increased efforts to recruit vendors, and increased effort by procurement staff. One of the things that we've been doing through Taro and the bid center is that we've been meeting with the purchasing agents and contracts and procurement areas for the last couple of years. We've been doing it on a quarterly basis, and like I said, sometimes some of those players have changed, so we have to go back and make sure that they fully understand what the intent of the bid center is and what it's for. And they in turn need to know why we need the information, because we're putting it on a tracking system called our scorecards that we put together on how many businesses that we're running through there.
Diane, excuse me just a moment, Bill John had a question.
Okay.
And I'd be a little bit interested in how the 08-09 numbers are skewed with Flintcoat. Because they're not doing a real good job of subbing out to Cherokee subs. And yet they're getting credit for being totally Taro. And I'm guessing it's a big number in these percentages. And why, I don't know why they're not using subs and hiring Cherokee employees and that kind of thing, but I'd sure like to break that down just a little bit and see how true this really is.
Okay. We'll work with Dave on that. You can pat yourself on the back, though, because had it not been for some of your all's interest in helping us, I know that I would say maybe 3 or 4 of you all have been real good about going out and helping us to recruit some of these businesses. There was not a week that went by that I wouldn't get phone calls from some of you all asking about whether or not so-and-so had turned their certification in. And we appreciate that, because we have field offices, we have staff that are out there, but you're going to run into businesses out there because of the role that you play in an elected capacity, and we appreciate all that. We also held an inaugural Certified Business Awards banquet this past year to honor our certified business vendors. Kara, Meredith, Harley, Curtis, and Buell all attended. In fact, I believe Kara and Meredith were part of our program this year, and we had an outstanding turnout for the bid fair that we held earlier. It was probably one of the best attended bid fairs that we've had since we started doing this a couple of years ago. And we know that next year's will probably even grow more because we've got a lot of phone calls. But the main intent was to allow these businesses to interact and partner with other businesses. If you had a business that was out there that was doing, say, construction work, they were able to find out about other businesses out there that they could partner with that were Indian-owned businesses, so that when they needed certain kinds of products for what they needed, as far as cement or maybe supplies, they knew which stores were out there that were there at the bid center. And believe you me, we've gotten a lot of phone calls and a lot of feedback. Even some of these business vendors have come by my office as well as Anna's office to let us know how much they appreciate Cherokee Nation doing this, which allowed them to in turn do business with other Indian businesses. The networking was probably one of the more successful things that we did. We've received a lot of feedback, and we plan 2 other bid fairs this year. We're going to do one in Muskogee at the Three Rivers Clinic in Muskogee. It'll be sometime in the summer. Then we have one planned again in the fall in conjunction with our banquet. Page 5 illustrates how much the Cherokee Nation and enterprise purchases have certified businesses that we bid on. And you'll note that over 55% of the procurement opportunities, Indian-owned businesses are certified to bid on. And the eligible certified Indian economic enterprises figures do not include government purchases. And this is what she was asking about in the first question. This is the chart that shows that. The green will show you where those are on this chart. That's the non-eligible, 44.87. And there is a chart that will show you what that entails, and it's on page 7. Page 6, the chart shows how many eligible procurement opportunities are awarded to certified businesses. And that's pretty self-explanatory. In page 7 is the non-eligible certified Indian economic enterprise purchases, and this goes back over here to the chart that shows the green between the red and the blue. And those are the areas that are non-eligible procurement opportunities for the chart on page 5, and that's the listings. Since Kara's not in here, Buell, will you explain that to her since she asked that question? Thank you. Page 8, efforts to increase procurement of certified Indian economic enterprises. Centralized notification of procurement opportunities over $5,000, and it goes on the bid website. Increased training assistance to the certified Indian economic enterprises. Over 2,200 requests for assistance since 2005 through the One Stop. Significant increase in walk-in and phone traffic at the One Stop. and we get an average of 60 calls per week, 25 walk-ins. Now, this is just at the bid center. That is not the Taro office. There's a lot of people that stop at the Taro office, or else they are contacting the Taro staff out in the field. And we don't have that captured, but they're going to start recording that as well in their weekly reports. Aren't they, John? Open satellite one-stop bid center in Claremore this past year, electronically monthly newsletters to almost 400 small businesses. This was started this past year, right after we opened the Claremore office, and Veronica Hicks, who was over in our public affairs office, moved over to commerce, and she's the person who's responsible for getting that newsletter out. We drafted language for contracts regarding subcontract payments within 10 days of contract being paid by Cherokee Nation, and June Butler is the central point contact person in Callie's shop for that, for the government side. One-on-one work with contractors to increase the number of subcontractors to certified Indian economic enterprises. Page 9, continued efforts to increase procurement to certified Indian economic enterprises. We refined the CIEE, which is the Certified Indian Economic Enterprise Reporting based on industry segments, revised the W-9 forms to improve certification information and vendor system. What we're doing is we're putting the W-9 with all of the certification applications, and Callie and then will put that in the system, which means that if you're coming in to be certified as a Taro vendor, you will automatically be in our system whether you do business with us or not. After 1 year, they will go back again and look at that to determine whether or not you've done business with us, and if you haven't within that year's time, then you'll be taken out of the system. And then when you come back in for recertification, you'll fill out those forms again, and if they want to be put in there to do business with the nation, then it'll go back in that system. But this is something that we met with Callie and her staff on about 3 weeks ago, and we're in the process of getting this done. Further refining categorical inclusions for the enterprise reporting, encourage Indian businesses to Indian businesses relationship among Indians owned directly. And we will be doing more workshops with them on how they can do business, how they can do business with the Cherokee Nation. And this is something that Veronica and the people that are working in the bid center will be doing. Future efforts to increase procurement to certified Indian economic enterprises. This goes into the 5,000 reporting Cherokee government total, approximately $5.7 million year to date. That's on page 10. And the last slide deals with government days paid from invoice date. And this is something that you may be interested in. The last chart depicts the government's prompt payment of invoices. The large blue section is the percentage of invoices that are paid within 30 days of the invoice date. Not 5 days, not 8 days, but 30 days. The percentage equals 85%, which is a very high rate. If you look at a lot of your government entities, and we have visited with several of these other entities, and you may have visited with Doug about this, a lot of government entities will say a 30-day time period. And if there is, if you go past the 30 days, there could be a good reason. Maybe it's because they haven't met their deadline, or they've had so many down days because of illnesses with some of the crews. There's always going to be extenuating circumstances, but that is something that can be reported, where if you had a pie chart, you can show the number of days that you were able to pay within that time frame, and you can show the reasons why you didn't actually pay. And it could be because maybe they haven't met the specifications of the contract and the RFP. We will continue meeting on a regular basis with the procurement acquisition management of the business entities. We have been in contact with Dave. Dave's going to ensure on the business side that dialogue is there, and then from the government side, Callie will ensure that the dialogue is there from our office as well as the bid centers. So things are moving, and we appreciate all of the input that some of y'all had in regards to some of the questions that you asked.
And I think Tara has a question for you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Garvin.
So in the future, will this quarterly report also include businesses as well, and not just the government entities?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Garvin.
Yes, I was curious about this. This contract over 90 days. What kind of deals are those?
You're looking at the last page?
Yes, true.
those that are over 90 days, they could be in litigation or they could be other things. I'm not sure. When we talked with some of the people that are responsible for that, maybe the RFP, there was change orders. There could be a number of things, but I think it's a very small percentage when you look at the blue chart in comparison.
Small percentage, that's a long time, 90 days.
Yeah, but there's usually a good reason. Chad, do you want to respond to that?
Some of that is involved with health care disputes about who's a primary payer and such, and so when it ends up to us, we try to collect the primary pay, secondary pay, and it'll be that far out. In fact, we carry over liabilities for sometimes a year or two, contract health payments to vendors in Tulsa, hoping that we can recover on those contracts when we have to ultimately pay them.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Madam Chair? Kelly? Thank you for a well-organized presentation.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Stewart,
All right, I guess I'm up.
you're the
Good
showstopper.
afternoon. Just to look at the entire tariff process, getting more Navy-owned companies to be certified, I think, is a big step, and we're not really involved in that, but it sounds like that is working pretty well. The second piece of that is to let our taro vendors know what jobs are coming up so that they can plan and know about the bids and get them in plenty of time and so on. And the one-stop shop and some of the efforts that we've been going about, I think, has accomplished that. And if it hasn't, then we need to know about it. But we've really worked on making sure that that information is out there. If you want to do business with us, there's not a barrier in terms of finding out what work is available. And I can't remember how long the one-stop shop has been in place. Do you remember? 2005. So that's been in place a while. So I do think we're getting people that know, what kind of jobs are available. And then the third piece of that is to award fairly. And of course, that's always controversial, and we'll talk about that in a minute on that whole process, how we have tried to make that fair and reasonable. And at the same time, protect the tribe and get lowest price and best quality and so on, which is sometimes not an easy task. And then the final process of that is to make the process conducive. There's been a lot of efforts to that effect. We've tried to break bids out where we make smaller bid packages. Sometimes that works better, sometimes it doesn't, because all of the contractors are working over each other. But we have tried that. We need to make our payment terms, and I think the chief reflected this in his letter, that the state process, I think, is a good one to look at. Our policies and procedures are not quite as sophisticated, I don't think, as they should be. And looking at the state and what they've done, that's an accumulation over years of bidding and, transparent bidding practices. I think some of those would definitely apply to us. We've tried to accommodate some of those efforts informally or putting it into practice or in some of our policies, but it's not as well documented as it should be. So I think we have work to do on that, but I think today you need to get a feel for where we're headed to make sure it's in the same direction that you want us to head, and I think you'll find that it is. But we need to document and all of those things more. And I think the next step of this will be for us to recommend policy changes that will reflect some of these practices. And we're not ready to present those today because we have a lot to look at in terms of what the state has, and we'll do that. But what we would end up with is a recommendation on what policies we should follow and be in all of our businesses, and contract terms that should be embedded into subcontractor contracts and so on. So that's kind of the next step, but I think it definitely needs to happen. From our perspective, we've done a lot of things to promote taro, and this handout right here that looks like that on the front is just a bullet point summary of some of the things that we've done. You know, we've had some of the doing business, Flintco up trying to talk to contractors on what bid packages are coming out. You know, the bid process itself, is everyone familiar with that? I mean, how we actually do that or not? Should we just start from scratch on that? Like, so let's just take a construction contract, what we actually do.
I think it would be helpful if
Okay.
you have time. You have an
Okay,
hour.
sure. We have the time and we have the people. So, Sean, why don't you come up and I'm going to let Sean talk about the construction, and this is going to be a very layman's discussion about how we practically go through a process of putting the bid together, making the selection, who's involved in it, and what criteria is used, and then on. And then after that, I'd like for John Watson to come up, and he actually handles just the procurement of just goods and services, not the construction piece. So kind of get your questions, feel free to ask them, because this needs to be kind of a working session for you to understand what we do. So we'll just keep it informal, and I'll just let Sean talk about construction piece.
Yeah, I guess I'm at the bottom of the hill here.
Yeah.
It's kind of evolved from where we started 3 or 4 years ago, especially since the first construction project. And we've tried to make that easier for everybody to participate that wants to participate, and help people that may be intimidated by the process. And I think over the years that we have made a lot of significant improvements in it. One of the things that makes these projects a little harder than other projects is this is a design build process, and when you get into those, there's different things about that don't make that as easy to put together packages and get those out on the street as if you sat down and planned the whole project out, developed each plan, each bid package, and put them together and sent them out. Sometimes you're in a hurry because you're holding up a different piece of the pie because of drawings or decisions or whatever. And so those are usually the times where things don't work quite like we would like for them to do.
May I interrupt? Ms. Sean Watts has a question.
Thank you. What's your sense of the design-build process possibly fundamentally creating barriers maybe to our Terra businesses? And have we figured out in post-assessment of other design-build projects whether or not it's financially feasible? Like meeting deadlines, because we always say that finances, because it's supposed to be faster.
If I could interject on that, I think the design-build process actually could work in the reverse to help Terra vendors, because if we were to sub out, let's say, the casino to $100 million to one general contractor, well, that general contractor will go out and get subcontractors to be a part of his fixed bid, okay, which we may or may not be involved in that selection process. We would go on low bid for the project, 100 million, 90 million, 80 million, 110 million. So we make that selection, and then those subcontractors would be part of that particular general's bid. And then after that point, we're finished. We want that contractor to build it for 100 million, we'll pay you 100, we're done. Well, the design-build process actually allows us, when we have a bid package ready, to sit down and take bids on the actual, subcontractor work that digs a little deeper than the general. And that's not just with design build, but it does lend itself to that. So, for example, we might say that if we have a project manager like Flintco, and we would take 4 bids on the heat and air, we get a chance to look at those 4 bids and apply a Terra process to that. Where if we would have just said we want to build a casino for 100 million, we may not get a chance to look at those sub bids. So I would, and Sean, you can chime in, but sometimes this process is actually better for our Terrell vendors because we get a chance to sit down with all of them. John, I don't know what your comment would be on that, but I know you've been in on a lot of those meetings where we sit down and go, okay, here's our bids, and you're involved in it, Sean's involved in it, and we're able to make a selection. So that would be part of my response. I don't think that the design build process is as efficient from start to finish, but there are many factors why you do design build to get it open quicker and be first to market. And so we would be willing to pay a little more for first to market opportunity rather than build the thing in 3 years, wait a year and a half to get it designed, and then build it. And what I found is even after you design your house, I don't know how many of you built a house, but if you've gone through that house plan and then you build it, invariably you find something you're going to change, right? I mean, it's not what you think. So there are always changes. So to your point, Kara, what we're doing now with the theater, we're pulling back all bids on all drawings until we get 100% drawings, because construction costs have gone down, and we want that to go out as one bid package so that we can get lowest price on everything. Because now that we have the casino built, the theater, we feel like we don't have to be first to market on. We can wait. And so we haven't even put that to bid yet. So we're being selective in that process.
So one more question, and I appreciate the candor and the point made about breaking out the packages. So, but do you go further to make sure that when they bid, that there's Indian preference or Cherokee preference on their subcontractors?
Well, they have to comply, I believe, with tariff.
I think
Our
the way I've understood
subcontractors.
CNE in the past is that they just go with the fines and there's no push to make sure subcontractor costs. That's what I
Flintco's contract requires them to go through the Terrell process.
Okay, it does.
They have to
Okay,
comply.
thank you.
It's
I
written in
think
there.
the gentleman in the, would you stand, please?
I was
Jerry Crew, he's with our procurement.
Jerry, you want to come forward? You had it.
Well, I was just going to,
Yeah, I want as many people out there as want to come out.
As Sean was saying, in our contract with Flintco, there are requirements that they follow our same bid process that we have in place as if we were bidding it out ourselves. And that is to say they have Terrell preference in it with 24-hour rebid opportunity. CNE reviews and approves all of the bids for their subcontractors. So when they bid a subcontract under our contract with them, it essentially is as if CNE were bidding it ourselves. It's posted on the one-stop site as our bids are. The bids come in, we have a pre-bid meeting with them, we sit down with them to go over the amounts, and then it's not awarded until we give our approval to that. So I think that was the specific question, as if the GC has the same bid process that we do, and yes, they do.
And many
That's our
times we would
contract.
participate in that with Flintco just to make sure that that follows. So Jerry and his crew is in procurement, that's in the procurement department. And so we have 4 or 5 procurement officers and in some case lawyers, and they look at that process.
Ms. Countwatch, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I assume that includes also going through the one-stop business for all those sub-bids. Does that happen?
Sub-bids as far as the contractors?
Subcontractors, so Flintco pushes out those bids to the one-stop business center.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Snell?
Yes.
Dan? Mr. Buzzard?
yes, I just want to make a comment on design build. You made some good points, David. There are also some setbacks to a design build contract. As you can tell, in a design bid contract, you're going to see a lot of change orders in that. Not only does the designer get a change order fee, but the engineer gets a fee, the contractor gets. There's about 4 or 5 people that mark those prices up when they do a design build. So there's disadvantages to it too. So it could almost cost you as much doing it that way as you do if you have a fixed contract. So I think we have to be careful when you say it's better, because A lot of times it's not, and even on a fixed contract, when you do a change order, you're going to not only pay one person, you're going to pay several people to make those change orders. So if you look at West Siloam Springs contracts, you'll see probably a change order, and you'll see a markup on Flintstone, you'll see a markup on the designer, you'll see a markup on the contractor, so you're looking as much as 30, 40, 50% on change orders. So I don't know, design bill is good in some instances, but I don't know if it's so good on a $100 million contract. But we talked about this before, and then you told us that, the casino business is changing every day, and then I realized that because you go in and see them make those changes, that those people don't do those changes for nothing, and you're fully aware of that. So I just want to bring that forward to make sure that we all understand, there's good things and there's bad things about a design bill. But I know that a casino is a little bit different than any other contract, but I certainly like to know what I'm going to be paying when I bid something out. And I refer back to a road contract. We know exactly what it's going to cost, but granted, there are some change orders that have to be done. So I just want to bring that out, for this committee to consider that and hear what Sean was saying about design bill. Thank you.
And to add to what Harley said, I'm getting the real feeling out in the market now that we're getting bids, real low bids, with the idea that they know they're going to beat all their competitors out at the front, and they're going in with the idea they're going to do change orders, and that's going to bring them back up to, if the job should have cost $3 million, they bid it at $2 million, get the change orders and get back up to $3 million, but they've cut all their competition out. And that's not really fair to the competition, because they bid in good faith, and then they're getting cut out, and the guy that hits it bids it low, and then he knows he's going to get some change orders.
Right. I agree with all of those points, and what we decided fundamentally, that in the case of Catoosa, that it was critical that we get the project started, expecting some of those issues. Now that we're in, we are taking, for example, the hotel at West Siloam. Well, that's not going to be a design build. We're going to have now that we've got the casino open and we're there, now we can take a little more time. So I agree with you, with all of you, that there are pros and cons to doing design build, but I think in looking back, we were the first casino to open in Catoosa. Now we have, our timing now at the tower, because we started early, is very closer to the competition, so we can remain first to market. Catoosa, it was critical, and I think in that case we had guaranteed maximums, didn't we, Sean? In some of the cases, we have guaranteed maximum prices, so we don't have change orders that lead all the way up to that. So we're probably not going to be in this situation again, because now that we are first to market, the market is somewhat flattened out a little bit, and now we're being a little more careful, and we're going out to get a hard bid on all of our new projects. So I would say that it's a good discussion. We could debate it for a long time, but we're not going to do that, I would say, again, just because of the market conditions. So now we're back into getting the design 100% complete, going out for bid, getting hard bids, holding our general, and our subs accountable for that. Really the general, because this cost may go out to a general contractor that has one price. And so then, they're accountable for delivering for that price and following the Terrell rules. So,
Any other questions? Continue on, Sean.
Okay. Just one point for Kara there. I think there's some other tribes around, and I won't name names, that didn't take the design build approach, and they're just now getting their casino to market. And when you talk about cost, you talk about opportunity cost, you have to look at opportunity cost too. What did it cost you in terms of lost business? I think one of the key factors for us in being successful is, like they say, being first to market. And we can look back historically at our financial statements and the results of the company over the last 3 or 4 years, and know that we got a big piece of that market that we wouldn't have gotten if we hadn't moved full speed ahead. So there are disadvantages to it, and you do have to look at it both from a cost of construction standpoint. Your cost may be a little higher, but we more than, I won't throw a number out there, but we more than made up for that in what we made in net income that we wouldn't have made if we'd have gone through the whole process of planning it first and delaying construction and taking another year or two to get open. So we try to look at all that whenever we bring a project out of the ground. And to Dave's point, we have pulled back some of these others from the standpoint of being able to take advantage of some of the market conditions that are out there that have changed. We started these projects in terms of market and cost at the worst possible time. You had Hurricane Katrina come through, not building prices up when these first came out of the ground. Then you had the Olympics over in China that everybody bought up all the steel. Steel prices went out of sight. Then cement went crazy. I mean, and then the commodities and the copper and everything. So we lived that cycle, and instead of continuing through it now that it's topped and peaked and started down, we've chosen to pull back non-essential projects and try to take advantage of the market. So that's where we are there. Back to the bid process. We get the bid package ready. It goes one stop. It's posted out there. Everybody turns in their bids. We have a bid opening of Flintco, our people. Terrell is there 99.9% of the time. And the bids are opened. They're tabulated. And we look and see who has the best bid. If there's a big difference between the bids, then we will have a de-scope meeting to make sure that everybody understood what the parameters of that bid was, and make sure somebody didn't leave something out and causing their price to be a lot lower than someone else's, or vice versa, it could have been higher than someone else's. So we try to do the de-scope meetings to make sure everybody understands, because a lot of times, like I said, with the speed of what we're doing, sometimes the documents aren't 100% complete, and we want to make sure everybody has what they should have had in that bid, so we don't get change ordered to death. If the low bidder is not Cherokee or Terrell, they have a 24-hour rebid period. It comes back in, we tabulate them again, and then we award not only on low cost but on ability to perform. We try to take care of the nation's money. We try to put good business practices in to make sure that we're doing that. We have bonding requirements on some things. We have retention to protect the nation on other things. And, that's why we follow those. And as we'll get into a little bit later, we've made some adjustments to help people out where it's necessary. But we put those things in there to protect the nation's money. And it's just industry best practices that we do that. But we'll work with everybody to try to improve those things too. So once the 24-hour rebid period has passed, we'll tabulate the bids, come up with a decision. Terrell's, like I said, they're 99% of the time. Our people are there, and then we make the award. It is a closed award. We don't publish the bids, and there are a variety of reasons for that. And, it can go either way, and like I said, we'll make accommodations for whatever everyone decides is the best for everybody. So that's kind of how the bid process goes.
Mr. Buzzard?
And Sean, and we just talked about those bids being open a while ago. I think the more transparency we have, the better off we're going to be from a council's perspective, not getting questions as to who got the bid and why. And I know the reasons before that we didn't publish those bids because of the terrible thing of the 24 hours. I don't see why that can't be done after you did everything you're supposed to do and just read the bids. Because what I'm getting from the Terrell contractors is they don't have any idea, they don't have a clue where they are on bidding smoke shop. They may have been $40,000 too high. So if they read the bids, and you know, there's nothing wrong with reading a public bid if it's Cherokee money, I'd like for us to work on that, because I think it could only help our Terrell people to see where they are, and to say what time I was saying a while ago about ODOT. The reason they publish those bids because they put them on the website because they have an idea of what the next bid is going to be for a road, and I realize the casino is different than a road. But usually concrete is bid about the same, framing is going to be about the same, roofing, you know, you're going to be about the same. So it just helps the, not only helps the Terrell vendor, it helps everybody that's putting in a bid, and next time you bid something out there, they're going to know, well, you know, they got this roof job for, you know, $20 a square foot, so if I bid 40, you know, I'm not going to have a chance to bid. So anyway, I'd like to just take a look and see if there's some way that we could at least do that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Snell?
This is probably for John, but John, do you have a way of tracking those Terrell bidders? Are they getting a bid on this?
As far as tracking which ones the Terrell vendors are, yes, we have a sign-in sheet at every meeting, whether it's pre-bid, a bid opening, or a de-scope meeting. So the bid openings, we know which Terrell vendors are bidding. They send us a spreadsheet every time for every bid that's there. What happens is sometimes we'll have 20 Terrell vendors show up for a, let's say, a road project, like the North Road project when they did it about a year ago. And only 2 of them bid. Some of them, they just don't bid on it. And we're working now to push the Terrell vendors and the non-Terrell vendors that are awarded contracts into using the Terrell subs. Actually, we're making them call people and things like that. I think you'll see it more in the Siloam Hotel if they ever build that. I know the painters are, the electricians will be, and I think one other company is also, one other project, 2 companies are going to use smaller Terrell subs on that. So we're forcing them to do it to get our backing. They think they want our backing and stuff, and they know we can put employees there for them. So I think you'll see more of it on the hotel now when they get ready to build the hotel in Siloam.
Another point to note, and Jerry, you may want to comment on this, is the actual, you know, the valuation and the decision-making process. When we make those decisions, those are all documented. So after we have all these meetings, there's actually a documented evidence of our decision and why. So you might, Jerry, if you would just stand up and tell them exactly how that works and what we have in our file.
And again, right now, I think we're talking about the Terrell subcontractor bid process, but this applies essentially to all of our bids where we're bidding it ourselves as well. But taking the Terrell subcontractor bid process, we'll have a tabulation sheet as the bids are opened up and read, and again, that's Flintco representatives, someone from our construction group, someone from our purchasing and contracts group, generally someone from the Terrell office. We'll go down line item by line item in that bid, put the costs in there, get a final total. As Sean mentioned, if there's a lot of variance, we'll have a de-scope to make sure that the bidders understood what they were bidding on and make sure we had good numbers. From that point, Flintco will write a recommendation letter to CME saying we recommend this contractor for these reasons. I'd say most of the time that is the low bidder. It's not always the low bidder. If it's not, then there will be documentation. There will be a recommendation, justification as to why they're not going with the low bidder. Certainly we look at those very closely if we're not going with the low bidder, but there will, for each of the bid packages, there is going to be a trail of what the bid numbers were, who was selected, the basis of the selection, and CME's sign off on who was selected.
And then if we get that recommendation back and we don't agree, then we'll go back at Flintco and sit down and go, well, let's talk about this a little more. So I think you can, this is a fairly common bid opening process where you have more people in the room, everybody's watching everybody, so we ensure that it's fair and there's no funny business going on. Secondly, the value of which one is selected is challenged. There has to be a recommendation from Flintco. and that's usually among agreement of all the parties. I don't know how many times we've had something where we thought this was and they thought it was different. If there's a difference, then we usually sit down and talk about it. So I think you can rest assured that that process works very well. It's well documented, and there's no funny business that goes on at that point because Jerry's in contracts. He has an obligation to make sure we follow the law. Terrell is there. Sean's looking over the project, and then Flintco has to actually build it. A lot of cross-checks.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
One other thing I'd like to say about this time period, and Bill John stepped out, but not only was it the highest cost period of construction in recent times, if ever, in history, but it was also where everybody was busy that wanted to work. And it was extremely difficult in the beginning when we started these jobs to get a significant number of bidders, whether they were Terrell or non-Terrell, on these jobs. So, you know, if the situation was today we were going to go out for bid, we would probably have gotten a lot more participation, but by a lot more vendors, both Terrell and non-Terrell. So
yeah, there were some situations where we would send the plans would be out, we would get the bids back, and because there was copper or some of these commodity prices shot up, we would bring those back. We would get all of the architects in the room and engineers. We would actually redesign that entire bid package because the price was too high. So then we would say, no, we want those lights, change these lights, total de-scope to change the price, and then we'd go back out. So it was a challenging time, but rest assured that the process was very good. It was, you know, if we were out of budget with what we thought at the beginning, we brought it back and we rebid it. And then that created also, I think, a lot of this confusion with regard to the contractors because we were trying to get the lowest price we could. And sometimes that required a lot more work on their part. Okay, so that essentially covers our process that we go through now. If I can turn it over to John Watson. John can talk. You have a little more?
I have 3 points.
3 points, sorry about that.
No problem. And that'll do me, and I can sit down in the corner again. Retainage, wanted to address the retainage. That's been an issue with several of the people and several of the subs, and so we took another look at that, and what we have done is to put in a minimum quarterly review of the project. Everybody knows in construction you're going to have retainage when they sign that contract. So we've encouraged Flintco to negotiate with the subs and make them negotiate with their subs to make sure that they're tailoring those to meet that particular sub's need instead of just saying, well, it's a year. If their piece of that business going forward doesn't require that, then we're going to work with them to do that. We're also going to and have accepted requests for release of retainage on an individual basis based on where we are in that work process. Again, to not put people in a bind that might need their money, especially in these kind of times. So if somebody has an issue, then we'll get with Flintco, and if we feel like that's in the best interest of the nation and it doesn't put us in a precarious position, then we'll certainly work with them to release that retainage. And you know, again, being stewards of your money and everything, we try to do what's right, and that's why the retainage is in there. And then we reduce the retainage requirements as the project progresses. So those are things that are currently happening.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, 2 questions. First of all, on the last thing you brought up, do you mean that you're reducing the overall percentage requirement as the process?
Yeah, once it gets past a certain percentage, and I think it's 50%, Jerry, if I'm not mistaken, it's cut in half. I think it goes from 10 to 5. So.
Okay, and then if you need to request retainage, who do they go to? Because I understood Flintco was holding our money. That would be then they're paying the retainage, or were we holding the money?
We're holding the retainage, and we pay it to Flintco, and then Flintco releases that.
So But in the past, were we releasing that to Flintco and they've been holding that throughout the whole project and earning interest on it? So
No.
we were only releasing it after a certain point then?
So what we're saying is if there is a subcontractor that has a request to get their retains early, then we're allowing that to happen. So what they would do is apply to Flintco. They sit down with us as long as we're comfortable. Because a lot of times, those subcontractors have mostly labor, you know, and so if we can see that the work is done and there's no risk that, you know, there's more to do or something's wrong with it from a warranty standpoint or whatever, then we'll go ahead and release that. And that's what Sean is saying. We're being a little more lenient on that.
So when they come to me, they need to go to Flintco?
They need to go to Flintco.
Okay, perfect.
And then
Thank you.
Mr.
and
Bailey?
Don gets with you.
And I think you probably answered that. Are you saying you release the full 10% upon 50% completion?
No, sir.
Then-
We reduce it by 50%
Okay, so
down
you're
to
still
5.
holding, so you're holding 15% until the end of the job then?
We'll be holding 5 once it releases or hits 50%.
So we hold 10 to begin with.
Hold 10, and then when it gets 50%, you release 5. Okay.
We release
5.
50% or
I
5%.
see, okay, all right, thank you.
Bonding, that's been an issue. Where we can, with the tarot vendor, Flintco has been pretty creative in some of these things, and we have actually helped several of our tarot vendors by not requiring them to post a bond because we'll buy the materials, and all they're doing is providing the labor, and we feel like that really reduces the nation's exposure out there to liens and things like that. So in the instances where we could and we felt like it was appropriate, we've done that, and that's allowed some of the tarot vendors that would not have been able to participate in these projects to go ahead and do a lot of work.
Do you decide to do that only for tarot vendors, or do you decide to do that and tarot vendors and non-tarot vendors get that same advantage?
Just tarot vendors.
Okay.
Now, we buy a lot of the material ourselves on non-tarot construction pieces for a financial reason that I don't really want to talk about here, but that would be the only reason that we would do that. C&E has also raised the ceiling on our bonds requirement. It used to be $50,000, which meant anything that we were going to do over $50,000, that person had to have a bond. We've raised that to $100,000. So there's another $50,000 worth of business there that people can apply for and bid on and not be subject to a bonding requirement. Again, the bonds are in place to protect the nation's money. And then there have been a few instances, not many, where we've just totally waived the bond on a tarot vendor where we felt like there was very little risk to us or exposure to us to allow them to have the work. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the prompt payment. And I know it's a pretty term and it's one that we strive for, but in the construction business there is a multitude of reasons why people don't get paid in 15 days from when they turn in the invoice. Most of this is always negotiated into their contract with either the sub of Flintco or as Flintco's sub into the contracts that are made. They understand what those payment terms are. I think today's economy and everything has put even more stress on just a piece of the process that's normally stressful anyway. But there's a lot that goes into getting paid if you're a vendor or a sub, and some of you have businesses and you don't just pay an invoice. You make sure that the support that you have behind that invoice justifies paying the invoice. So in the construction business, there are a lot of things. There is a cutoff date that Flintco has told all of the subs that they have to have their invoices in by a certain date to meet that particular month's payment cycle. And if you miss that payment cycle, you're going to get paid the next month. And that's just standard through the industry, and everybody understands that. When that information is presented to Flintco for payment, it needs to be in its proper form. I mean, there has to be a process that everybody follows to be able to allow Flintco to timely push that stuff through their system. It has to be coded right. There's got to be support for their invoice. And so what Flintco has done is it's held training with the people. Said, okay, here's what we require. We'll walk you through this. And, that goes to reduce the frequency of people getting their invoice rejected for the lack of payment. Okay? Let's say for some reason you missed the cutoff. If you just were lollygagging around and not getting business taken care of, you're probably not going to get any special treatment. But if there's a legitimate business reason for you not getting your invoice in, we'll take a look at that, just like we did on the retainage, and try to make an extra effort to get that person paid before that next business cycle. One of the things that continue to be a bottleneck for everybody, again, being a good steward of your money, is to make sure that the pay application that Flintco submits to us for payment is correct. And how that's done is the architect reviews it, our construction department reviews it, Matrix Odell reviews it, and then it gets paid. Well, in the beginning, what was happening was we'd get the pay app from Flintco, we'd send it over to the chief's office, he'd toss it down on his desk, and it'd sit there 2 or 3 days till he got around to it, and he'd sign it, or he'd kick it back. Then it'd come back to him, then it would go to our group, they'd look at it, they'd do the same thing. If they were in office that day, they'd take care of it. Then it'd go over to Matrix Odell, and by the time it got back and ready to be paid, it was 3 weeks later, you were already behind the 8 ball. So what we've done is we created a payment group, and as soon as the Flintco pay app comes out, all those different people that have approval authority and responsibility for our money, they come in one room, they sit down one day, and they slug it out till they get that application right. And that's eliminated that 2 to 3 week ring around the rosy, oh, I didn't have it, I didn't get it till yesterday, kind of deal that goes on with getting stuff paid. So those are some of the things that we've tried to do to improve the process. It's not perfect, but it's a long way from where we started, and we'll be open to any suggestions to improve that process, and we try to take good care of your money.
Yeah, on the prompt payment, if we allow everyone to send a payment in whenever they want to, then we've got to have our architects and engineers and accountant, we've got to have, 6 people in a room to come in and go, okay, we had this one payment, and it really is, it's very costly. I mean, if we allowed you to send in a bill anytime, then Flintco and us, we would all be sitting there every day waiting for somebody to get a bill, and that's all we do. So there has to be some rule and logic to it. Now, I think when there's an extraordinary circumstance, I don't know if we've made an exception for that, Sean, in the past. Have we done that?
Yes, we do that.
Okay, so we do that if it's appropriate. But what we can't do is do that 4 times during the month. So that's all we do. We wouldn't get the work done. So educating all of the subs, we do that. We try to accommodate a special situation, and we speed up the process if we get it in on time.
Mr. Buzzard? And then Mr. Garland.
Sean, you may have answered this, and I didn't catch it, but is there any processes now that you have in place on paying the subcontractor? Or is it just, I know we don't here per se, we deal with the general and not so much with the sub, but that's where we're having a lot of the problems at.
A lot of your issues is not getting paid by a sub.
Yeah,
one of the things again that we do before we make payment is, or before Flintco makes payment, is they do this. We give you the check, you give us a lien release.
I know, but
and there are some people
they'll sign the lien release knowing they owe something.
Well,
But my question was, you don't really have
to not know that.
Yeah.
And again, it's built into their contract with whoever they negotiated with. We don't.
And I know you can't.
But what we can do,
Can't babysit
Harley,
everything
is
all
if
the
we
way
have
down.
a situation where we have a sub that continually is doing that to their subs,
Yeah.
we can address that with Flint Co. And they're pretty good about doing that because, you know, they don't want a black eye for that either.
And I think that's a lot of the complaints or the questions we get, because some of our Terrell contractors are the smaller subcontractors, and they just can't operate without getting paid. And I know you can't do that to everything.
Well, but what you've seen, you know, in listening to all this, what you find is that, you know, construction is just something you almost can't proceduralize to the nth degree or put it into law, because you still can't pay unless you have certain things. It doesn't matter what laws pass or what procedures pass. You still got to make sure the work's done. You got to make sure the engineer signed off on it, and all of those things. So I think the ombudsman approach that Chad has recommended is good. I mean, we're actually acting in that regard all the time, because if we have a situation, we try to focus our efforts and get it taken care of. But that's one where an ombudsman, you can tell them, they go, okay, let's try to figure this out.
Well, I've found a lot of it is just lack of communications between the general or the subcontractor and the subcontractor.
Right.
It's just the dang communications.
And you know, when you look at the number of contracts and vendors that we've had, I think we've done a pretty good job to limit the number of problems. I mean, if you just look at it on a percentage basis, we're not going to be perfect. We're trying to get these procedures in our policies that would make it better, and I think we're getting there. I mean, I think our policies have gotten so much better in the past even 6 months to eliminate some of these problems.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to document that Sean did request additional time up here. I've never heard him do that. So,
Thank you.
just for the record.
Coming off here. There's a lot of talk in the news and newspaper in various parts of the country, especially in Florida and around New Orleans. They got all this bad drywall in from China. It's putting off all this stink in the house. And how are we staying away from that, or are we?
I tried to check on that before I came. Mark's out of town, and but our sheetrock is coming from Tulsa, and I think they're getting that in the United States. I will check on that and verify that, though. I've heard the same report. It was cheap sheetrock, and I haven't seen any cheap sheetrock.
Well, you know, a couple of years ago, you couldn't hardly buy it.
Yeah.
And I guess they
That sheetrock, I ask you to instruct Sean to say that 5 times quickly.
Turn off the cameras.
Anyway, this lady was on TV and she had this new house and the sheetrock was giving off this odor and causing the pipes to all rust. And it's a very serious problem, and I feel sorry for her, but the contractor's already gone under and she's not getting any help from anyone.
That's a bad situation.
It really is.
I really don't think there's any risk of us.
Okay, so
All the
what-
time you need, Sean?
That's all I'm.
Eddie.
Let's Dave ask a question.
Dave?
Okay, so what I'd like to do is let John Watson just take a few moments. He handles all of our procurement that's non-construction, that just our everyday vendor payments, and just talk about this kind of the same process. And keep it short, John. We'll just kind of lay it out. If you have questions, and we'll be happy to answer them.
I appreciate the opportunity. Basically, we have a requirement come our way. They know $2,500 is small spending in a way that we basically can go direct to any Terrell vendor, or we can pay by credit card. It may be something an emergency or an immediate need. When we go to $2,500 or above the $5,000, we require bids, require some type of quote. In all instances, when we buy, Terrell preference is always there. Whether it's $1 or $100,000, that's what we preach to our people. Anything over $5,000 we post on Cherokee.org. We bring our bids in. Any bid or quote that we get from a Terrell vendor, whether it be $1 or above the $5,000 mark, we give them an opportunity to rebid. And We try to always encourage Terrell opportunity, Terrell to Terrell, work together. We had an instance here recently where we had a requirement of a light over one of our casino tables. We contacted 2 Terrell vendors, got them hooked up together, saved us over $5,000 per light unit, saved us over $20,000 for the whole project. So it was a great Terrell success story for us.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have 2 questions, John. First of all, how are sole sourced contracts handled, like documentation and those kind of things, and how much do you estimate is sole sourced at CNE?
I think sole source and single source is very small comparison. Sole source documentation is basically when you have one possible source for that product. Single source, by definition, is if you have multiple opportunities to buy and choose just one source. And we don't use that very often. I'd say probably less than 5% of our spend.
Yeah, we might have occasions such as lawyers or consultants where it's more of a personal kind of thing, or it's like in some cases we do signs because the sign they have, they've done it before, they're on site, they're quick, and they can get it done if there's a time restraint. But we have to fill out the form, and Jerry approves. Jerry's still here. I'll have to talk with him. But anyway, Jerry, we require a sole source justification, and so whoever is procuring it has to go through Jerry Crew and he has to basically say, yeah, that's a reason for sole source. And so then we'll sign it, and then that's it. So it is an exception, and it has to be filled out every time.
We work real close with John in the Terrell office and Terrell people to help us make decisions when there's something that comes up that's be controversial or a question. So
we try not to. I mean, we know that that's an issue, but in business is business, and we have to operate sometimes quickly, and so we just try to keep it to the minimum. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that's one comment you made kind of speaks to what I think some of our frustrations are is relationships sometimes make contracts. So if you know that you're going to have a long-term need, say for signs or such, in specific, I believe, for example, there is a tarot sign vendor, or at least one. So are we working to develop that relationship to where they could be looked to as providing those last-minute needs and stuff? Because that adds up a lot, I think, especially in small businesses. And that comment kind of tells to what I thought part of my frustrations.
Well, it's
lawyers, engineers, and lawyers, professionals deserve an opportunity too. I mean, if they're Indian preference, and there's a lot of them that are tarot certified.
That's true. I mean, in the lawyer, for example, I mean, we got to make a call to get the best defense, and so sometimes that's a judgment call, and it's not really one that you just go out for bid. You look at opportunities, I think, have Indian preference, but it just can't work all the time. So the best we can do is we have to have a reason for it. We evaluate it and approve it and go on down the road and try to keep those to the minimum.
Part of our decision criteria is that when we look at things, we always look at things in the best interest of the nation, the CNE. We bounce everything, the decision we make in procurement up against that. And hopefully a Terrell or a Native American-owned company will be involved in every decision we make. It's not always the case.
And John has come up through the ranks in procurement and now kind of heads that up, and he's Cherokee, and I guarantee you he thinks about Cherokee. And that's, as we get more Cherokees in our system, we have that mentality, and I think he's done a good job of that.
I'm watching. Thank you. And I have to agree with you because when I've interacted with John, I think that's true. But the feedback I get from Cherokee employees in other groups is they watch their management chain make decisions that impact tarot vendors, and then that's out of his control, especially if they're sole sourcing it. And there's ways, they feel like there's ways to circumvent the system. And
Well, you need to tell me what that is, and then we'll check into it. I mean, that's the best way to do that. If you think that's going on, then you call the hotline or...
I think that's around the marketing, especially around the marketing areas where the professional services and stuff, that there's no consideration. I haven't, we have had engineers complain in the past. I have no idea if there's any current circumstances, but the things that I hear about are not the ones necessarily, and I think John's had the opportunity to stop some of it, but not to beat a dead horse, but really the question into was, I know you stated that all the bids are $5,000 and above, go to the one-stop business shop, but do they hit the website?
Yes,
consistently?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's imperative. I want to point out something too that maybe take time. I'll give you an instance of something that's beyond Terrell. I don't know if some of you know Mike Phelps. He owns Mountain View Meats. He has 21 employees counting himself. He's not Terrell certified because he doesn't have a Cherokee card. I have a card, Indian card. But he's got 20 Cherokees working for him. About 3 of them are full-blood. So we went out and got him, brought him up, introduced him to our food and beverage people. And now he's doing business with us because we have a passion for helping the Cherokee Nation. And if he's out there helping the Cherokee economy by having 20 people work for him, although he's not Terrell, we're going to give him every consideration we can. So.
Mr. Buzzard?
And just to follow up on what you're saying, Ron, that's good to know that you're looking into that, because a lot of times we have people that say they're Terrell, they're front companies, and they can prove they're 51%. But when they go hire people, they're not hiring Cherokees, they're not hiring Indians, they're hiring people other than Indians. So that's good to hear from you. The other question I have is, anything under $5,000, you said you were getting a Terrell. What percentage are you not getting as Terrell? Do you have a
Probably
percentage?
not getting Terrell. There's certain businesses we have no Terrell opportunity. I mean, the food and beverage is one part. That's a $10 million spend to us every year. There's no Terrell companies out there that are major distributors that can handle it.
Yeah, but my question was, is what percentage of non-Terrell are you getting under the $5,000 contract?
I'd have to take a look at that.
I'd like to know those numbers.
I
I mean,
can do that.
it sounds good for you to say that we call a Terrell vendor under the 5, but I'd like to know how many you're not
I understand. I get that.
Thank you.
The percentage on, if we took out the spend for this year so far, backed out what we don't have any Terrell competition for or availability, it's about 57% Terrell. So, and that number has just gradually increased over the past 3 or 4 years to a pretty good number. So,
well, I could see where it was, once, and I think Diane Kelly pointed it out really well a while ago, because I think we've talked about this and talked about it, and I think everybody's starting to buy into the system that we want our Cherokee people to be employed.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Count Watts?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So along the lines, I mean, Diane's assured us that she's going to ask for the information, but I think that information becomes important as, again, like Ann and I goes out looking to direct people for business opportunities, that we identify all those areas where if we've got a $10 million spend on food distribution, maybe they don't become the primary food distributor, but there's an aspect of that they could pick up in part of their business to create jobs and such. Or maybe there's a Cherokee with the money to acquire a company.
Absolutely.
So, and knowing that as base revenue would be helpful. So I assume that you could then readily, if you're quoting those kinds, and that 57% of the buys from C&E have no Terrell businesses associated with them, and we'd be able to verify that.
well, we do
That's a
have that.
$500
We
fine.
have that, and we'll be back to that to you. Thank you very much.
Getting down. So I think in conclusion, at least from our perspective, we would like a chance to go into our policies and put some of these concerns into some kind of just written bullet point type procedure changes and possible contract changes, make sure that we've got these in our contracts, and come back in 30 days and make a recommendation on what we should do. There are some provisions in the current legislation that I think we responded to. One of the most critical is that we would be defined as an employer for purposes of the Terrell Act, which is really problematic for us. But I don't want to get into some of those details of the law unless it's appropriate for today. I think that's another discussion. Hopefully we've explained what we do in Terrell, and that was what we tried to do. If there are any, do we have any other discussion on the agenda, anybody? Okay. So I'd be glad to wrap up at least our side of it with any, answer any questions. But I would like for you to give us a shot to wrap these procedures up. Business sometimes, if it's turns legislative, we can't do our job effectively for the nation. So we'd like to get you comfortable that we're going to have policy and procedure in place that will protect your money, do what's right for the nation, and get our Cherokee vendors business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So just to clarify, if we either like adjourned and rescheduled in a month, or just waited for a month, however we want to adjourn this meeting or not adjourn, but you would be presenting us more details to reassure us about everything that's been presented today.
Well, what we do today, we do. I mean, what I would like to hear from the group is if what we've told you today is contrary or not, number one. We've heard from you, Harley, I think, on you'd like to see some open bid processes in place. And Tina, I think you had some suggestion about looking to the state regulations to see if we could take some of those and put them into our policies. So we're going to do that. And I'd like to get, the top 4 or 5 concerns. I mean, you've heard what we do, and if you want to go back and digest that and email us, that would be appropriate. Just tell us where would you like to see us emphasize, change, or improve, and then we'll take that and try to come back with some policy changes, if that's acceptable. I mean, I'm just trying to think out loud about it.
Committee? No?
So that's what.
Mr. Buzzer?
I just got a comment. David, what you told us is fine as far as CNE policy goes. I think, and I'm just speaking for myself here, I think what we're looking for, or what I'm looking for, is the enforcement of Terrell policies. I know it's not your job to enforce it. So
well, yeah, it is.
We have a Terrell committee that should see those, that you enforce what you're saying you're going to enforce.
Yeah.
And I think that's what my perspective, that's where I'm coming from. It's fine that you've got your policies and says what you're going to do, and what I've heard from you I like. Mm-hmm. And I think what I'm looking for is somebody to make sure those policies are followed out as far as the bidding processes goes and how our Cherokee people are getting jobs.
Right.
And I know you can't do it, and CNE shouldn't be doing it.
Well, no, but
you can help. You're helping. But
I mean, I think
what we're looking at is somebody to enforce the policies that are written.
I mean, I feel like it's my responsibility.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you.
I mean, I look at it that way. If we're not doing it, then I want to know about it and we'll change it. What we've tried to do is to have Terrell at our side during this whole, these processes. And hopefully we've done that, John. I mean, we've been very open arms to Terrell, and to come in and be a part of the bid opening. And so, I don't know how,
Well, I think what you're doing is great. I think what you're doing, it sounds good to me. And I think what we're looking for is, and you're right, you can play a big part on the enforcement of these things.
Well, maybe we could get some better reporting to assure, like you requested, Tara, that on our percentages, and those can be targets, and show you that those percentages are going up, or if they're going down, it's a problem, or, just some reporting that would give you a trend and give you some comfort that we're doing better and improving.
Okay, thank you.
Harley, are you, I'm not quite clear what you're asking. Are you?
Well, I think it was more of a comment, that David has given us the C&E portion of how they think the policy is, but I think we already have some Terrell laws in place, and what I'm saying is I'd like to see those Terrell laws more enforced.
Oh, you're looking at the enforcement.
At the enforcement side of it, yes.
Chief Smith said something about perhaps a small claims process that if it stops here, that's not where it's going to stop. We still have a process beyond that, like a small claims process, whereby those concerns can be relieved. Is that what I understood you to say?
Well, I believe that you made that suggestion. It's
The ombudsman.
well, actually, we create some standard language for all of our contractors that if payment's not made timely within so many days, they can bring a cause of action in tribal court and try to expedite it. Because if you bring the same thing in our bureaucracy, it's not necessarily just going to get resolved, and we just create a bureaucracy. So I think David was willing to try to find some language that be standard contract language.
It would go to some process to,
Is that what you're looking for?
like an arbitration kind of clause or
Yeah.
something that,
And yes, that was the big part of it. The other part of it is on contracting, when Flintco puts these contractors out. I'll give you an example. The Terrell law says we look for people that's local contractors, and to me local means Delaware County, Rogers County, 14 county jurisdiction. And I know that we're getting a lot of contractors that live in Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama, and things like that, and to me that's not local.
right.
We've got a contractor that gets a contract for steel, but he's over in Arkansas, and he employs everybody but natives. You know, that's what I'm talking about, the enforcement side of it, to somebody to check and see that they're following what they're supposed to do. And it's fine if somebody's a Terrell vendor and he comes up and they can create 100 jobs, but we give it to him because it's Terrell vendor, but he didn't hire any natives. You know,
So you're
the
saying the
enforcement side.
second tier
Yeah,
down
exactly. Mhm.
enforcement.
And that's what I'm saying. I may not make myself clear, but that's what I'm saying. You know, we
Right.
have the Terrell subcontractor, and he gets a contract, but he can create 100 jobs, but then he hires everybody but natives. And that's what I'm saying, the second tier
So
down.
why don't we work together with, work with John, we'll try to come up with something that would do that. I mean,
And,
Dave,
you
is
know,
that an
that's-
example of what you will bring back in
right, yeah,
30
we can
days?
address that idea. Yeah, those are the ideas we need from you.
And even if a non-Terrell vendor gets the contract, you know, that's what we'd like to see, is that non-Terrell vendors to work native people. And that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
And it's all right, you know, if we get a non-Terrell contractor, because he gives us a really, really good deal, but we need to make sure that he's hiring native people out here.
Mr. Henry, did you have a
Thank you.
comment in regard to Mr. Buzzard's concern?
No, mine was more logistic-wise, of how we go from here.
Oh, okay. Can you hold on
Yeah,
a second?
yeah.
Ms. Gordon Glory, Glory,
Fine.
whatever.
And my question kind of goes to Harley's. Harley's talking about the individual employee. I would like to see how we're protecting the second tier, which is the sub-vendor contractor. I would like to see that if Flintco gets the contract, that we see some subcontractors be Terrell. And right now, that seems to be an unaddressed question. We don't seem to be
You want to dig
making
deeper,
sure-
in other words, that's what
Right,
I'm
we're
hearing.
ready
is-
now. I think you've got,
Right.
you gave us a good overlay of what you do with an original contract. And I think we're ready to go to the second layer, which is to follow that Cherokee dollar to a sub-vendor that's also Terrell certified. And I wish you would get with Diane Kelly and John Overracker and yourself and present us some options of how we make sure that the sub-vendor level is Terrell certified.
Right.
I mean, we ought to be able to do that. We just keep a little old rope on that dollar until it gets down there where we want it to go. Everybody, I mean, and I keep going back to the state and people get mad about it, but the state has to approve those subcontracts. When you contract with them, they have to approve your subcontracts. And they look at a list that they have that you have to work from. And you better be getting people off that list. Or pretty soon you don't have a contract with them.
Points well taken.
Ms. Council,
Madam Speaker, due to the time, I don't know that it's appropriate to recess for 30 days, so I would like to make a motion to adjourn and then have a new meeting with all these feedback and reports and finished policies and such, because we're giving them another 30 days after a year and a half, on Monday, the May 11th at 1 p.m.
that our meeting date?
Yes. I assume the same time and kind of would be adequate, schedule-wise.
Special rules.
Special
or you wanna go
rules.
Commerce?
I'll second that.
Moved and second that we adjourn this and set up a new meeting for May the 11th at 1 p.m. Any discussion?
Are we,
Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, are we adjourning, or are we just calling a new meeting for May 11th?
Adjourning and,
Well, I mean, this is not gonna be a continuation, this will just be a new meeting with a new agenda. Okay.
And
go ahead.
I think this was debatable. So it would give us all an opportunity also to give him written feedback and to set a more detailed agenda if there's other items that we didn't address today, including taking action on the pending legislation.
Mr. Henry?
That's what I was going to interject. I mean, right now, logistically, we have, you passed a Carroll Act out of your subcommittee, which is going to be heard on either the rules or executive finance later on this month. Do you want to delay action on that legislation and then hear the meeting on May 11th, or you could have the May 11th meeting, have that same group at the regular rules? I mean, I was just going to say that, put that up to the committee here.
Well, we were all fine.
I understand, that's fine.
Ms. Calmont?
Whatever the chair recommends.
We'll have a new meeting May the 11th at 1 p.m.
Okay.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And we made a motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Or adjourn. Madam Chair, for our discussion.
I know you adjourned. Here's a listing of the certification